man. I'm preaching through the book of Revelation. What I'm doing is I am giving them all of the messages that I preach along with the information they can follow along. So we're preaching and teaching through the book of Revelation. All right, when you get to chapter number 13, chapter 12 was the division in the tribulation period. The abomination of desolation took place there at the mid-trib. Again, the first 3.5 years were great tribulation. You know, it talks about these souls that came out. It said they came out of great tribulation. You got these people, all this different type of teachings that the first 3.5 years were light tribulation, and the last 3.5 great tribulation. The Bible said it's great tribulation. Matter of fact, chapter 6 says that over 1/4 of the people on earth, now if you count that today, you talk about over 2 billion are going to die in that first half. I know about God's people going to be slaughtered in that first half. Now we're going to start the second half tonight. Don't want to rehearse all of that, but we're going to find in chapter 13 as he introduces, John introduces this, that you're going to have 2 beasts that will rise up. One, the beast out of the sea. We're going to deal with that one tonight. The other one is the beast out of the land. One of them is a political system. The other is a religious system. Notice I didn't say a spiritual one. It's a religious system. God mentions the word religion 9 times in your New Testament, and only 1 time did he ever have anything good to say about religion. That was in James chapter number 1. But we find 2 beasts that are going to be raising up. They're going to be the ones that are virtually trying to rule this earth under the Antichrist in the last 3.5 years. What I want to do is I just want to simply look at these tonight. I've got the second half of the tribulation under A1, the first beast political, the second spiritual, and I used that word and I corrected that, but I'm going to correct that. They're not really a spiritual one, they're just simply religious. Both of them are the end result of 6,000 years of decay and decline. Both of these systems we're going to find started back in the book of Genesis. The decline began in the Garden of Eden with the first sin. It has consistently escalated over the millenniums. 2,000 years ago, the Apostle Paul addressed these same systems when writing the Ephesians epistle. The battleground continues to rage in their day. It continues in our day. It will culminate in a tribulation. I put Ephesians 2 in here because it shows these 2 systems when he's writing to the church at Ephesus that were alive and doing well back then. Paul said, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places." Wherefore? Because they face these same 2 things. Listen, we're facing them today. We're facing one, a political system that's setting up. It's called globalism. Globalism is a one world thing to where everybody gives up for the good of the whole. I thank God for Donald J. Trump. He put America first. Then I put Israel. God bless their heart. Listen, we're not friendly with a lot of these nations. So globalism is just simply the setting up of a socialistic form of government in the last days where they feed everybody, take care of everybody, and then when nobody can work, then they don't have anything to take care of them with, and you end up with a third world nation again. That's exactly what socialism does. Right. Under B, now John's going to leave heaven and do something. Let's read verse number 1. "And I stood upon the sand of the sea." Now, heretofore he's been in heaven. God puts him on the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. Now, I'm just going to stop with that tonight because, one, I believe that we need to identify this system. This is a political system. This is not the religious system. It is the political system. When the Bible talks about the sins of the sea, under B, it gives no indication of where the sea is. So I'm going to let you give me a little bit of leeway here to speculate. not supposed to do a lot of speculation. But everything in the end time just revolves around one sea, folks. That's from Spain all the way around Europe, down through Asia, Asia Minor, the Middle East, back up through North Africa. It encompasses one particular sea. We find that humanity started there. Humanity's going to end there. So I'm just going to throw out to you that I believe it's probably going to be the Mediterranean Sea. I couldn't see it coming out of a sea out in the Southeast Asia someplace, the Pacific or the Atlantic. But it doesn't really matter. But the sea in the Bible is a metaphor. It's for the masses of humanity. Sometimes God used what we call metaphors. What is a metaphor? A metaphor is just simply something that gives you a visual idea of where something's going to come from. It just gives you something to look at. In Revelation 17 in verse 15, he explains this. People say, well, I believe he actually comes out of the ocean itself. He explains it in chapter 17. He saith unto me, the waters which thou sawest, where the horse sitteth, are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. So instead of coming out of the literal Mediterranean Sea, he's coming out of the masses of these people. People today, listen, they don't want God. What they want is they want somebody to take care of them. I believe America is ready for Antichrist. Somebody that's got the answer to the questions, and evidently people don't have the answers at this particular time. Now, see, the form John saw rise out of the sea of that beast was wild and destructive. As we see the advancement of socialism and globalism in our day, we cannot help but see the destructive nature that this thing is going to be. Hey, I'm talking about this impending judgment of the last day. They use ignorance and fear to gain control over the masses. I still believe that COVID has done more to set up the end time than anything in the history of our lifetime. Amen. They have controlled people with just sheer ignorance. They've controlled people with fear. Yes, COVID's real and people die from it. But we've gone through SARS, we've gone through swine flu, we've gone through everything in the world. And you've never seen anything handled to this degree. So what's happening is, you've got people out here, I call them believers. You've got people out here today that's still scared to death. I mean, hey, I'm not talking about just masking. I'm talking about social distancing and everything else. They have put fear in these people. To understand chapter 13, I put something in here that you're not going to be familiar with, but under D, we need to understand that both beast, political, and religious had the same beginnings. They had the same progressions, and they're going to have ultimately the same end. As things begin, they progress, and they have judgments. To understand that, I put on the derailment of a train car. My dad was an engineer on the Louisville and Nashville Railroad. He sat as a little boy on the front porch. His dad was a blacksmith in a little town called Crofton, Kentucky. And my dad sat on the steps and watched these steam locomotives come by, and he said, one day I'm going to drive one of those, and he did. Now, he retired as an engineer. Sometimes you've got some cars that jump track. They'll get off track. What they have to do immediately when they know that these cars are off track, it's not the whole train. You'll get 2 or 3 cars. Something will kick up. A car will kick it up, put it up on the rail. The car behind it will hit that. It goes off the rail, pulls another 2 or 3 cars off the rail. Immediately, what they have to do is they have to stop the train. If they continue to pull that train, these cars that are off of the rail will tear up every cross tie and every crossing until you get it stopped. These big train cars are heavy. A lot of coal coming out of western Kentucky. A train of coal, you always count them. You've got 100 cars, and they're 100-ton cars. So every train has 10,000 ton of coal alone on it. That's not the tear weight. That's simply what they've got with them. So what they do, they have to stop it, and they bring in a little bitty device called a re-railer. Two men can pick up a re-railer. It's a little device that fits over a rail, but then it's got a little Y that comes off of that. And what they do, they set it right in front of the cars that are off of the rail. As they pull that train forward, tracks here, that re-railer sets them right back up on the rail, the wheels of them, and puts them back on again. And I put that down there because where you get off track, listen, you've got to get back on track spiritually. What we see going on is never going to get back on track. The destruction is already done. Under C, I want to look one at the 7 heads or world powers. When he talks about this beast has 7 heads and 10 horns and 10 crowns, he's talking about something that we are biblically familiar with. You may not know that. A lot of people do a lot of speculation, but we're very familiar with what these are. These 7 heads are world powers that are both political and spiritual or religious. They came from the same source. So we're going to look at the prophetical and historical description of that beast a little bit tonight. The beast has 7 heads. These 7 heads possibly represent, and I believe they do, 7 world powers that started in the plains of Shinar almost 6,000 years ago, folks. This is old as time, and they continue to the end time. So I'm going to give you a list of them. We're going to deal with them in 2 different groups. The first world power was a place called Babel or Babel. It was in the plains of Shinar. A man by the name of Nimrod was the man that oversaw that. If you look back in Genesis chapter number 10, chapter number 11, chapter 10, you find his genealogy. Chapter 11, you find his political power that he set up back in those days. But Babel was the beginning of world power, and Babylon will be the end of world power. But under Genesis 10, it just simply, we're going to look at this quickly, Cush begat Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one in the earth, and he was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel. Then he named some other places there around. This was kind of like the 5 cities of the plains where God destroyed when he destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. But we find here that he began that city. In Genesis chapter number 11, we find the story. The whole earth was one language, one speech, and it came to pass as they journeyed from the east that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there, and said one to another, Go to, let us make brick and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone, and slime had they for mortar. And they said, Go to, let us build us a city and a tower, whose top may reach into heaven. And let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower, which the children of men builded. And the Lord said, Behold, the people is one. That's your globalism. But the people is one. They have all one language. Interesting, the language of the world today is actually English. When I was over in Europe, I was stationed over there some 50 years ago. Everybody spoke English to some degree. English is what's called the commercial language. Over there, they say if you speak only one language, you've got to be an American. Everybody else at least speaks 2, 3, 4, 5 over there. But they had a common language of that time, and that common language was English. And it became the commercial language of Europe. As we went over, I spoke a little bit of German. When I got hung up, they could talk to me and understand in English. So we've got basically the same thing. But the Lord came down and he said this, they're one, they all have one language, and this they begin to do. Now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. Go to, let us go down, and therefore confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build the city. Over in Revelation chapter 18, verse 10, he ties this in with Babylon. He said, standing afar off for the fear of her torment, saying, Alas, alas, the great city Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour is thy judgment come. As far as we can discern, the plains of Shinar were over in what we call Mesopotamia. Today you would call that Iraq, over in that area. We'll find Babylon the same. The Second World Empire is actually the Egyptian Empire. We've been studying that in the book of Exodus. Various pharaohs ruled over this particular power. But when you get to Exodus chapter number 14, where we are in Sunday school, they are the greatest power on the face of the earth. But they're an extension of Babylon. But it says that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob all went down to Egypt during the famines, as Egypt was the greatest and most powerful nation on earth. So we find one, Babel. The second one was Egypt. The third is what's called the Assyrian Empire. There are some names in here. Nineveh was the flourishing capital of the Assyrian Empire. You go back to Jonah's day, Jonah hated those people. He was scared to death of those people. They literally flayed people alive. They would take the epidermis off of their body and just leave. You know how bad a place hurts when you just peel off that top layer of skin. They literally flayed people alive. He was scared to death of them. But there's some names given in the Bible. Tiglath-Pileser the third, Sargon the second, Sennacherib. These are names that you find in the Bible. They were the main ones that headed up this empire through the generations. They lasted until probably about 610 BC. A very hated people, a very cruel people. So you had Babel, you had Egypt, and the third one that you have is the Assyrian Empire. Now, I'm going to go to Daniel's prophecy for a minute. When you go to Daniel, you remember the great image. And he gave a description of that image. What he did, he gave a description of the last four. The fourth is going to be Babylonian Empire, the fifth the Persian, the sixth the Grecian, and the seventh the Roman Empire, by the way, which is still in strength today. We're going to look at that when we get into these 10 heads and these 10 crowns for a few minutes. But in Daniel's prophecy, only the last four heads of the beast were mentioned, because Daniel was speaking about the present time while he was in Babylonia's captivity. He was speaking of his captivity, and prophetically, he was taking you to the end of time. So we've had 3 world powers. Now we're going to look to 4. I put some verses down, Daniel chapter 1 and verse number 7, verses 1 through 8. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head upon his bed. Then he wrote the dream and told the sum of the matters. Daniel spake and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the 4 winds of heaven strove upon the great sea. The 4 great beasts came up from the sea, diverse one from another. Now in verse 4, he deals with the Babylonian. First the Babylonian Empire under Nebuchadnezzar and Belshazzar. He said it was like a lion. It had eagle's wings, and beheld until the wings thereof were plucked. And it was lifted up from the earth, and made stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. He's talking about Nebuchadnezzar. But at the same time, we find here that he gives that fourth one. The fourth was what we call the Babylonian Empire. That was the empire that was took Nebuchadnezzar, brought him into captivity. They lived through Belshazzar's time into the Persian dynasty. So the fourth is the Babylonian Empire. The fifth, he said, behold another beast, a second. This is going to be your Medo-Persian Empire under Darius and Cyrus. But it said, like to a bear, and it raised up itself on one side, and had 3 ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it. And they said thus unto it, arise and devour much flesh. The Medo-Persian Empire took over from Babylon. You remember when Daniel was there, and they wrote upon the walls, many, many tinkle Upharsin. Just simply, you've been found in the wanting, and the balance is wanting, and he said that your destruction is nigh tonight, basically, is what he said to them. But what happened was the Persian Empire began to attack Babylon itself. If you look back historically, they tell the way it happened, what they did. There was a river that ran through Babylon. Babylon was a great city. They protected that city, but they had water that came through it. And while Belshazzar was in a drunken state, they had begun to divert that river. And what they did, the Persians diverted that river, came through the wall that night, and they destroyed them. So you've got Babylon, and then you've got Medo-Persian, which took them all the way down to a man by the name of Darius. Under the other beast, the second, he was like a bear. It raised itself on its side, had 3 ribs in its mouth, and he gives it a look at it. Verse number 6, we find the 6. After this I beheld, lo, another like a leopard. That's the Grecian Empire under Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great in his lifetime conquered the known world. Matter of fact, at 33 or 34 years old, I think historically he's 33 years of age, he sat down and said, I have no more worlds to conquer. Like a leopard, boy, he struck fast. He moved his armies very quickly, overpowered his prey, and overtook the whole world. So we find it had on its back, it had the 4 wings of a fowl. The beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. Then the 7th one, in verse number 7, after this I saw in the night visions, behold, a 4th beast. Now this is your 7th beast. You had 3 before these 4. The last beast is the Roman Empire under the Caesars. Dreadful and terrible and strong exceedingly, and had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces and stamped the residue with the feet of it. It was diverse from all the beasts that went before it, and it had 10 horns. Now we're just going to look at the 10 horns in just a moment. But I believe this beast is represented for a system, a political system that came all the way from the plains of Shinar all the way to the tribulation period. I believe this extension of power always has been. When we get into the religious system, you're going to find the religious system has its beginnings there. You've got what's called the Babylonian mysteries that go along with it, and we'll deal with the Roman church when we get to that place. But at the same time, this beast is a political system. It's being set up today. I think we're seeing the end of it. The weakness of our nation. Our nation now is getting completely into Russia and China. Giving them just anything they want. You see, America is not found in prophecy. You can't find it. I've got a book at home about that thick, a paperback book called America in Prophecy. America is not found in prophecy. America is not mentioned in prophecy. If I could find one verse where America is found in prophecy, it's in the Old Testament. And it talked about when the Jewish people come home, it said that they would be flown on the wings of the Philistines from the west. And I guess that's going to be America. We're flying them back home in our day. But you need to understand what we're seeing out here today. This thing has started a long, long time ago. It's gone through 7 world empires. You say, well, how come Rome was the last one? Because there's never been a nation that conquered the known world. Not after Rome. You've had very powerful nations. You had Great Britain as they colonized a lot of places and things, but they never controlled the world. These people controlled the economic, the clout of the entire world. These 7 different ones. So I believe that the 7 heads that we see are going to be these nations. But then he talks about 10 crowns, 10 horns and 10 crowns. I'm not going to deal with them long tonight. But the 10 horns possibly represent what we call the European common market. Now, it's also today called the European community. I think the European common market today has about 11 nations in it. You got a lot of fluctuation in the nations and the setup over in Europe. When I was back, you had Yugoslavia and Czechoslovakia. Listen, all these nations are renamed. A lot of their borders are breaking down. But basically, you have what's called the European Common Market. Now, I'm going to tell you the power of them financially. You say, well, we're the most powerful nation on earth. I don't believe financially we are. The euro in Europe today is the most powerful thing going on. When I was over in Germany, they used the Deutsche Mark. You had the French centime, you had centimes, you had the Italian lira, you had all of the British pounds, you had all these different things, and we were always trying to figure out where we could get the best exchange rate for our money. But today they have got what's called the euro. That euro dictates the worth of our dollar bills. What they do, and China's done this same thing, they devaluate the dollar against the yen. In Europe, they devaluate the dollar against the euro. When I was over there, you could get, I think it was 3 marks 60 for a dollar. That means that a Deutsche Mark was worth about 30 or 31 cents at that particular time. Now you don't get but maybe 3, something 2. Same way with the British pound. When I was over there, the British pound, you got, I think it was, I forgot what the exchange rate was, but anyway, it doesn't matter. What's happening is the financial power is moving away from America. It's moving to Europe. It's moving to China. Who are the main players in the end time? Russia and China. Russia and China, friend, are beginning to step forward as the United States takes a step back. This is not political, it's just simply the way the system is working. We are being weakened every day against these other nations, and the dollar is being weakened. Why is America not found in prophecy? I believe America is going to just simply decay from the inside to the point that it's got so many problems it can't do anything anyplace else. You take the borrowing of money today. I mean, they're borrowing just tens of trillions of dollars. They have no concept what $1 trillion is. It's a number to them. It's just a number with about 9 or so zeros out behind it. But at the same time, it's destroying what we have here. Now, what's happening is you're seeing that power shift go back. We've gotten back into the Paris Accord. They had over in England Brexit. You've got all these different things over there, these communities. But you have what's called the European Common Market, and these 10 have worked together to control most of the finances of the world. The one that heads them up is Rome. I put some down here. I think these nations are, this was in 2020 under G. They were all Austria, Belgium, Bulgaria, Croatia, Cyprus, the Czech Republic, Denmark, Estonia, Finland, France, and Germany. In the end time, I believe that they're going to have that 10 that will be solidified. And what they're going to do, they are going to economically control everything in every nation before it's over with. Then we found that he said, I considered the horns, and behold, he was talking about in a different place here in Daniel, but he said, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots, and behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. So what we find here is probably a prophecy of Antichrist. He's going to come out of that community over there. I believe the Bible actually teaches that he will be a Jew by birth. The Bible said that he rejected the God of his fathers. We gave some scripture for that not long ago. So, under G, the beast is going to have 10 horns. Then he's going to give 10 crowns. What's that? The crown is the authority given to it. They're bowing to this authority. They're going to do that with Antichrist. But this will comprise the end-time revived Roman Empire. That's what it's going to be comprised of in the end time. And they're all going right back into it in the day in which we live. But I thought about that. I believe the last number will be 10. They'll control the finances of the world with the euro as they constantly devalue our dollar along with other currencies. Now, the Bible said upon his heads. I want you to notice, not upon its head, but upon his heads, the name of blasphemy. It gives a masculine pronoun. His. I believe that's going to be Antichrist. The names of blasphemy, he has always spoken evil of God. You're talking about a God hater. Satan is a God hater. He hates God. Hey, we've got a political system that is beginning to hate God in America. They don't mind religion. They don't mind you going to church as long as you're benign. As long as you don't cause any problems, they'll give you the right to do whatever you want. Once again, I go back to the COVID, if you've got your shots, you can do this. They're already controlling where you go and what you do, how much you can buy, where you can buy. I told people, they don't control me, but they do. They control me because I can't go everywhere I want to go. They've already shut doors. They've already closed things down. So this head of blasphemy will speak evil of God. Now I'm going to stop with that tonight, but we're going to get into the beast. But I believe it's coming from a world system that started back in the book of Genesis in the plains of Shinar. It has progressed through, passing that baton one to the other down to the Roman Empire, but the Roman Empire has never died. Remember Nebuchadnezzar's image? When it got to Rome, Rome was those legs of iron. In about 1052 or 1054 BC, you find what's called the schism of the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire spiritually or religiously split in that particular time. What they did, they actually had two popes. They had one in Rome, and then they had one in Constantine. So they had two different popes. They couldn't get along, so the Pope at Constantinople, he excommunicated, or he anathematized the one in Rome, and the Roman one excommunicated him. So you got now the Catholic Church and the Greek Church, the Greek Orthodox, which are basically the same thing. But you've got an end-time system setting up. This end-time system is what we're going to have to deal with when we get into the second half. They're going to be the strength, and you're going to find the political system will eventually destroy the religious system. What's the government do? It uses religion. It uses religion, not salvation, not Bible-believing people. I'm talking about religion. Do you know the Bible Belt is basically unbuckled? People here are religious. They belong to denominations. They tout their denominations. But boy, Bible-believing peoples are getting to be like hen's teeth. They're getting hard to find in the day in which we live, and they're getting more so as we go down the road. So we got a political system, and it eventually will eat the beast that comes out of the earth when we get to about chapter 18. All right? It's hard to teach this way, but you just pray for it. I try to get you some information you can work with. You can look most of this up, and just like I do, and try to put it together. But anyway, we're going to look at a system that Antichrist is going to run. Let's have a word of prayer tonight. We're going to have an invitation, amen. Musicians, you come. You need to come tonight, you come. You're here tonight on a Sunday night, not saved or not sure you're saved. You need to come tonight. Get that settled in your heart.